What's up, guys? This is a damn nerd here, and today we're starting a new series on this channel. We're going to be calling it Versus, and in this series we will be taking two popular video games and pitting them against each other to see which one is objectively better. We will be doing our very, very best to be objective in this series, when we're going to be showing you guys clips of every game side by side and separately, and then trying to explain to you why we came to the conclusion we did. Points in this series will not be awarded in totality. Instead, they will be split up based on how much better we think one game is than the other. So say you have 10 points for one section, and we think a game is 70% better, it'll get 7 points, while the other game will get 3. This way you don't win by 1 point, 6-4, and then completely lose everything. But before we get to that, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Especially if you like this video, we're going to do more versus on this channel, but we got a lot of other great videos. I always appreciate it. To every subscriber, I appreciate you guys. I really appreciate that. We're just trying to get this channel off the ground, guys. I love the support. And anything you guys see you think I can do better, I'm brand new at this, feel free to make a comment on it. I won't take it personally. The feedback is how we get better at stuff. So, let's get into this. So let's meet our first competitor. This game won over 800 awards, 256 Game of the Year awards, including beating out games like Fallout 4, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Bloodborne, the year it came out to win overall Game of the Year. It reinvented storytelling in video game. It told a mature and adult story and had a Netflix TV series spawned off of it. Ladies and gentlemen, The Witcher 3 and The Witcher 3's opponent. It is the best reviewed game of 2022. It will undoubtedly be the Game of the Year in 2022. It has moved FromSoft from a cult classic company to a mainstream position. People everywhere are talking about it. It has sold more than 13 million copies in only a couple of months. It's destined to be seen as one of the most successful video games of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, the Elden Ring. Now, let's take a look at the categories these two titans of gaming will be competing in. They are graphics, combat, story, exploration, music, and fun. Now, fun, or fun factor, will be kind of the combination of all the other categories put into one. So, here we go. So the way this works, we're going to show you about a minute clip of each game individually in every category, and then put the two side by side and talk about why we think one is better than the other. And then we're going to give them points. The winner of the majority of points is the winner of the overall competition, quite obviously. Now, these segments are roughly 4-ish minutes long, so if there's a category in here you guys just don't care about, you can feel free to skip 4 to 5 minutes in, and you should be beyond any of these categories if you just say, I don't care about this category at all. So, let's get started. Up first,
Round 1. Fight!
I guess so at first glance, I think both of these games look really good. Although hats off to The Witcher 3 being that it's a 2015 game. But the more you look at it, the more you start realizing the smaller details definitely go in the favor of The Witcher 3. Now, like here, some of the more story elements of the Elden Ring look incredible, but when you get out into the open world, you'll see that it just doesn't quite hold up visually. This is one of the early story areas in the Elden Ring, and you can just see how much better it looks than the actual open world, while The Witcher, on the other hand, is all open world footage. Plus, if you look at the trees swaying in the wind and shadows moving, it's hard not to say that The Witcher 3 has vastly improved overall visual quality. I think both games look relatively good in combat, although admittedly I suck at both, but I think they both look good in combat. They're both fluent, although I admit that Elden Rings is a little bit more clunky, mostly because it's the way the combat engine is designed, is to be. I thought this Storm footage was incredible, and I think it shows off what I think is the big differences between these two games. And just look at the difference in Storm and realize that The Witcher 3 is like 7 years older. And I mean, just look at the difference in the physics here in the Storm and the environmental physics. It's really impressive that The Witcher 3 had visuals like this back in the day. And the winner of round one with a 6 out of potential 10 points is The Witcher 3. Next up is the all-important RPG category of exploration. And going up first this time is the Elden Ring, trying to get even with The Witcher. Here we go.
Round 2. Fight!
Back already? Unusual fella, aren't we? Did this aged merchant have something that caught your eye? Have a safe journey.
Now for the holy oil.
Temerian or Imperial? Actually, don't really matter. Both kinds of corpses are just as hard.
Halt! No passage. Bridge is closed.
Because?
Cause King Radovid said it should be. Won't let anyone through who don't have a pass.
Perfect. Just so happens I have a pass.
What? Let me see. Doesn't seem forged. You never know. All right.
To be honest, guys, I did find exploration extremely difficult to capture on video. It's very hard to show off how much fun it is to explore a game with a video. The Witcher 3 and Elden Rings both have extraordinarily high-class exploration. Two of the very best games to just walk around and explore I've ever played. The very, very small differences between these two games, however, I believe the Elden Ring has a slight advantage, and that's because of question marks on the map. You see, The Witcher 3 feels the need to mark everything on the map like a Ubisoft game, creating a gameplay loop where you're constantly looking at the map, going to a question mark, clearing it, and then moving on to another. It can begin to feel kind of robotic and semi-disappointing. As you see here, look at all the question marks on the map here. While you look at the Elden Ring map, you don't see any. And I think that is really the big difference between these two games. By not holding your hand, exploration feels more meaningful in the Elden Ring. However, The Witcher 3 is ridiculously larger, as you can see how big the Witcher 3 is here. And it's a very tough call for these two games. But I felt like The Witcher 3 story is so good it makes you want to explore, while the Elden Rings you explore just for the fun of it. So overall, I have to say, the winner of this round, with again 6 out of a potential 10 points, is the Elden Ring. Oh, folks, we got a tie competition here going into round 3. Every point matters now. Round 3 is music. Mortal Kombat guy, take it away.
Round 3. Fight!
Both these games have extraordinary soundtracks in my view, and I find myself partial to either one. This one was one of the harder categories in here for me to decide between these two games. I think both suit each other well, but I have to admit, ever since I was a kid playing Halo, I've been a little bit biased towards the orchestra style music. And the Elden Ring definitely leans harder into the orchestra style music. And I will say, when you're playing both of these games and exploring the world, a lot of times I don't notice the music that much. But overall, I'm a big fan of both of these games' music, and my pick for best music out of these two games goes to the Elden Ring with 4 out of 6 points. All right, now this is starting to get exciting. We're getting into the really important categories now, like fun, story, and combat. Combat is up next, and for a long time, combat wasn't that important in RPGs. A lot of older RPGs didn't focus much on combat. Instead, they were all story and exploration. But these days, combat is as important to an RPG as it is to any other game type. And I think that these two games have very distinct combat systems. And this is going to be one of the tougher categories to determine, and definitely one of the more controversial ones. As always, Mortal Kombat guy, take it away.
Round 4. Fight!
This is definitely one of the tougher categories here, because if you look at the combat in these pictures, it's easy to say that The Witcher is better. It's more fluent, it's faster. Each enemy type requires a specific method to defeat. But the Elden Ring is clunky by design. So at what point does the design of a game have to be taken into account? That's the difficulty here. If we're just looking at the two straight up and comparing them, it's pretty obvious the Witcher's smoother, faster, and better. But the design of the Elden Ring was made to be like this. This is how FromSoft games are made to play. It's tough because the question really is, where do you end design choice with the final product? The Witcher 3, I do think, offers more depth to its combat. Yeah, that's going to make some people really angry, I'm sure. But I'm pretty sure it does, because The Witcher 3 forces you to approach enemies in specific methods with specific signs to take them out. For example, you can't fight a ghost without using the right sign, otherwise it will just teleport around and kill you. I don't feel like that was really a thing in the Elden Ring. As a matter of fact, when I beat the Elden Ring, I could just kill everything in the whole game with magic. Magic was broken. So, the winner of this category with 6 out of 10 points is The Witcher 3. And we are still all tied up after 4 rounds with only 2 rounds to go. Story and fun. Now, as I said before, fun factor will be made up from every other round. So we'll have mostly footage from the other rounds because it's kind of just like an overall score. But next up is story. Story has always been the most important part of an RPG. Still is. And I do think this is the area where these two games are the furthest apart, and that's story. So, Mortal Kombat guy, take it away.
Round 5. Fight!
And one other, whom grace would again bless. A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between, to stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord.
I set off to the festival at Redmane Castle on the southern edge of the scarlet rot blighted Caelid Wilds. Doesn't the thought just set your heart aflutter?
Back already. Unusual fella, aren't we? Did this aged merchant have... Now, Queen Marika the Eternal is nowhere to be found. And in the night of the Black Knives, Godwyn the Golden was fair taint of their newfound strength, triggered the shattering. A war from which no lord arose. A war leading to abandonment by the greater will.
What do you want?
Rejoice, for even a creature as depraved and base in nature as you can serve the glory of the eternal fire. Someone must see to the corpses on the battlefield. Necrophages defile those not already rotting in mass graves. This is not right.
That's to be my good deed for the day?
A handsomely profitable one, I might add. I know your kind don't work for free.
All right, I'll take care of it.
This will count amongst your merits. The more good one works in life, the more hallowed things are. Yes, splendid. Here are the holy oils. Dash generously and set alight, understood? I wish it to flare up to the sky, for the glory of the eternal fire and all that.
Once I've incinerated the bodies, where'll I find you?
So there is no more important category in an RPG than story. Honestly, I had to use a whole lot of the opening cutscene for the Elden Ring here because the game has very little story through its 100-hour run playthrough. While I also used the opening cutscene here of The Witcher 3 because I wanted to put the two next to each other, but I could have made 20 videos of story in The Witcher 3. It has like 100 hours of story in its 100-hour gameplay. The Witcher 3 could be argued to have a little bit too much story, especially in the middle of the game when you're in Novigrad just talking to people. But the story in the Elden Ring is somewhat nebulous. It seems to be a FromSoft tradition, while the story in The Witcher 3 is very direct. And again, this could be a taste thing, but I'm thinking that a game that has very little to no story versus a game that has tons of story, that the game that has tons of story has a massive advantage. I know that some people might say that they don't prefer quite as much story, but this is an RPG, and RPG story is very important. It's actually the primary role of an RPG is to have excellent story. And I really feel like this is the area where the two games are the furthest apart. I have a hard time thinking of nice things to say about Elden Ring here. I feel like the story is too nebulous, and it just feels kind of empty. This opening cutscene looks damn impressive, but there's very little after the cutscene rolls. Even when you kill most bosses in the Elden Ring, you don't get much in the way of story. So, the winner of this round with a whopping 10 out of 15 points is The Witcher 3. Alright, we've made it to the final round, with The Witcher 3 holding a slight advantage over the Elden Ring. The final round is Fun Factor. It's a combination of all categories we've gone through already. Here we go.
Final round. Fight!
And one other, whom grace would again bless. A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between. To stand before the Elden Ring.
So we are finally down to fun factor. And this again is a category these two games are very close at. I would have to say that overall, The Witcher 3 has a slight advantage in its fun factor, in my opinion, mostly because of some design choices made by From Software. For example, its minimalistic story and occasionally insanely and frustrating combat loop, repetitive bosses, and gameplay style, I think leaves something to be desired. Plus, The Witcher 3 is several times larger, older, but still manages to hold up visually and even be slightly prettier than the Elden Ring. Also, we didn't talk about it much in this video, but the performance of The Witcher 3 is excellent on a modern system. I was running at about 80 to 90 frames per second before I decided to drop it down to a lock 60. And the Elden Ring is rough even on my system, which is running a 3080. So it's really all these little things that start to add up when you start comparing these games. And that's not criticizing the Elden Ring. We're comparing two games against each other, and you have to nitpick because these two games are both excellent. And when compared against each other, there's not a lot of difference. But when you start nitpicking, it's far easier to nitpick Elden Ring than it is to nitpick The Witcher. The only real issues I can think about with The Witcher is perhaps that Novigrad segment in the middle of the game where you spend far too much time talking. And The Witcher can sometimes have too much exposition, which I'm sure some of the FromSoft fans will point out. But your overall winner of this round with 6 out of 10 points is The Witcher 3.